Welcome, everybody. My name is Sue Chang. I'm the Pollution Prevention Director at the Center for Environmental Health. We are delighted to have you here today to join us for CEH's Ditching Disposables webinar and the launch of our toolkit for healthier foodware in K-12 schools. We're going to have 3 speakers, which I'm really excited about, and I will tell you about them in a minute. But after we hear from the speakers, we will open it up for questions and answers. And if any questions are coming up for you that you want to pose, you can put them in the Q&A box, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any technical issues and need to reach one of us, you can use the chat function for that. Otherwise, I think we can get started. So we are excited to be launching part 1 of our toolkit today. We know that schools are already planning for reopening in the fall, so we wanted to get you the first part of our content as soon as possible. We plan to roll out additional components over the next 2 months, and we see this as an evolving tool and really value your input and feedback and want to make sure that what we're providing is as useful to schools as possible. So the Center for Environmental Health is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to protect the public from exposure to toxic chemicals. There's been a lot of great work to raise awareness about concern with single-use plastics, particularly from a waste perspective. We are part of the effort to build off of this important work and also raise awareness about concerns with other types of single-use foodware products, particularly those made out of natural fibers, and concerns with toxic chemicals being used in all of these single-use products. And so you'll be hearing today first from Elijah Butterfield, who is just wrapping up a 2-year Environmental Justice Fellowship at CEH. And they'll give a brief overview of the toolkit and touch on some of the issues, particularly toxics with single-use or various food serviceware products. And then we'll hear from Andrea Gottlieb, who's the Green Team Champion at Rowayton Elementary School, which is part of the Norwalk Public School District in Connecticut, about their journey to reusables. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Ben Schleifer, who is actually a new staff member at CEH. We're excited. He's the EDC's, or Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals and Food Program Coordinator. And he'll do a brief overview of the plan that's been developed. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elijah to start. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Sue. So here's a little roadmap of where we'll be going in the next 15 minutes. I'll give you an overview of our new toolkit and what you can expect from it. We'll talk about the benefits and added value that reusable foodware brings to a school. And we'll take a deeper dive into why single-use foodware is unhealthy for people and unsustainable for the environment. Before we jump into it, I want to emphasize that reusables are safe to use during the COVID-19 pandemic. In June 2020, health experts from around the world issued a statement to clarify that single-use products are not inherently safer than reusables, and to assure us that reusables are safe to use during the pandemic when appropriate hygiene and sanitation practices are in place. In April of 2021, the CDC issued an update indicating that the danger of contracting COVID-19 from surface transmission is low, and reiterating that the primary route of infection is through exposure to respiratory droplets carrying the virus. Let's get into it. Cumulatively in the US, schools provide 5 billion meals to students every year. Many schools serve these meals on single-use foodware, such as polystyrene foam or molded fiber trays, due to their convenience and low upfront cost. Unsurprisingly, this creates a lot of waste. A normal-sized K-12 school in the US would spend about $6,000 on 81,000 polystyrene foam trays every year if they served 1 meal per student every school day. If you were to stack all those trays on top of one another, they would be as tall as a 40-story building and weigh over 2,000 pounds. We often concentrate on the waste issues because we can visualize that, but there's more to the story. Scientists have found that many single-use foodware products contain hazardous chemicals that have been linked to a variety of health complications, including hormone system disruption, a range of cancers, behavioral and learning disorders, among others. Children are especially vulnerable to these toxic chemicals and can be exposed by handling or eating food that was served on products that contain them. CEH has heard from school district staff, teachers, and families from across the country who are alarmed by the growing amount of disposables in their schools, the toxic chemicals found in these products, and the impacts they have on our health and environment. We've heard you, and we want to help get toxic disposables out of our schools. So we've created a toolkit that is designed to help your school make the transition from single-use food serviceware to healthier, more sustainable alternatives. Above all, we advocate that schools consider reusables first. Reusable foodware is considered more sustainable because it can often be used thousands of times before it needs to be replaced, resulting in lower environmental impacts, and in some cases, less money spent in the long term. Reusables also eliminate many of the concerns associated with single-use foodware, such as exposure to toxic chemicals, increased waste production, and some recyclability or compostability issues. We recognize that reusables may not be an immediate option for all schools, so our toolkit contains resources to help you identify preferable single-use foodware and build reusables into your school's long-term plan. This toolkit will contain a step-by-step plan to guide your school's transition. Ben will speak more to that later. There'll be pricing calculators to help your school budget, toxicity information and guidance on foodware material types, equipment suggestions, including dishwasher types, and much more. With this information, we believe you will be equipped to create a transition plan that fits your school or district's needs. Getting reusables into your cafeterias is an achievable goal. These 3 schools and districts have all either successfully transitioned to healthier foodware or are on their journey. We're highlighting these schools and districts because they have case studies available on their transitions, so we and you can have a better understanding of how they did it. Palo Alto Unified School District transitioned from single-use foodware to reusables in 12 elementary schools that serve breakfast and lunch to upwards of 3,400 students. Annually, they save $25,000 and use more than 400,000 fewer disposable items and prevent more than 8,000 pounds of waste. Bishop O'Dowd has 1,100 students and was able to replace their single-use plates with reusable baskets without installing a dishwasher. Annually, they save over $6,000 and prevent more than 3,000 pounds of waste per year. Chapel Hill, Carborough City School District switched their polystyrene foam trays with compostable molded fiber trays at all 18 of their schools. In the first year, they eliminated 777,000 plastic trays and reduced their cafeteria landfill waste by 87%. All these schools have in common, they're minimizing their waste, they're teaching their students better values, and in the cases with reusables, they're lowering student exposure to harmful chemicals and saving money. To understand why we're so keen on reusables, it really helps to first understand why single-use products are so bad for our health and the environment. At CEH, we focus pretty heavily on the toxic chemicals found in products. I alluded to this earlier, but a lot of single-use foodware is full of harmful substances. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs, are one of the most common types of chemicals we find in foodware. The endocrine system in the human body regulates hormones that shape behavior, physical and mental development, intelligence, and more. EDCs can replace or alter the levels of natural hormones in the body. Even exposure to small amounts of EDCs are harmful because the endocrine system is very sensitive. Children are especially sensitive to the harmful effects of EDCs because their bodies are still developing. PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, that's a mouthful, is a type of EDC. They are a class of man-made substances that have earned the nickname forever chemicals because they're extraordinarily persistent in our bodies and the environment. Exposure to PFAS has been linked to a variety of serious health issues, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, delayed puberty, obesity, a variety of cancers, among others. In the US, 98% of people have elevated levels of these fluorinated chemicals in their blood. PFAS can be found in a variety of products, such as stain-resistant carpets, nonstick pans, firefighting foam, and foodware products. In paper and fiber foodware, they're used to provide a grease and liquid resistant barrier. And sadly, it's in almost all of the molded fiber foodware that we've tested. As of January of this year, 86% of all the molded fiber products that we've tested contained a high fluorine content, indicating a likely treatment of PFAS. In schools, children can be directly exposed to these chemicals by handling and eating food that has come into contact with foodware that contains PFAS. Exposure to PFAS has also been found to lower the effectiveness of vaccines by reducing the effectiveness of our immune system. In a study of residents whose drinking water was contaminated with PFAS, participants with high levels in their blood had a weak immune response after taking a flu vaccine, while participants with low PFAS blood levels had a strong response. While there has not yet been a study on how PFAS exposure might reduce the effectiveness of a COVID-19 vaccine, the current science suggests there may be a troubling link. In the light of the emerging science and concern around PFAS, many composting facilities no longer accept foodware that contains fluorinated chemicals. Non-fluorinated or PFAS-free molded fiber products are available, although are not as ubiquitous as those containing PFAS. Availability of these PFAS-free options are expected to increase as purchasers demand safer options. Before you purchase any compostables, be sure to check with your local commercial composting facility to make sure they accept foodware. When you do go to make a purchase, look for the BPI certified or CMA approved certifications. Both standards ensure that products are PFAS free. I'm sure many of you are familiar with expanded polystyrene foam foodware, commonly but incorrectly known as styrofoam. These seemingly innocuous products also have potential toxicity issues. When polystyrene is made, some unbound styrene molecules remain in the foam and can migrate into food. The World Health Organization, National Institute of Health, and the state of California all identify styrene as a carcinogenic or cancer-causing chemical. Harmful chemicals aren't the only reason why single-use foodware is unhealthy. As you may already know, they create a lot of waste. The predicted functional life of single-use foodware in a school cafeteria is about 20 minutes. The time and resources needed to extract the raw or recycled material, process it, form it, transport it, is much more extensive than how long it's designed to be used. The waste of single-use items, particularly plastic, can contribute to increased waste going to landfills, air pollution from incinerating waste, microplastic contamination of marine life, among many more issues. We often look at compostables such as molded fiber as green or a sustainable alternative. However, just because something is compostable doesn't automatically make it good. The pulp and paper industries cause a lot of environmental harm, including clear cutting of forests, biodiversity loss, pollution of fresh water from fertilizer runoff, and more. Molded fiber products that contain PFAS, which is most of them, are being accepted by fewer and fewer commercial composting facilities. Recycling facilities are generally unable to process any waste that's contaminated with food, so this foodware typically gets diverted to a landfill. And when compostable foodware is sent to a landfill, it breaks down to the process of anaerobic decomposition due to the lack of oxygen present in those waste piles. This process decomposes the foodware very slowly and produces methane gas, which has about 80 times the warming potential as CO2 over a 10-year period. Expanded polystyrene foodware is light, extremely expensive, and supposedly recyclable. Sounds like a win all around. Unfortunately, it is rarely recycled due to food contamination and because the process is usually not very profitable. In California, approximately 1% of all expanded polystyrene foam is recycled. Nationwide, the recycling rate of polystyrene products is even lower. This has led to some cities just banning polystyrene outright. In 2019, New York City banned single-use foam and beverage containers, like food and beverage containers, because they found no way to recycle them in a way that made any economic or environmental sense. Before that ban, New York City public schools were throwing away 850,000 foam trays every single day. If my point wasn't clear before, I hope it is now. Reusables are generally the healthiest and most sustainable model for foodware. The danger of contracting COVID-19 from surface transmission is low, and industry standard procedures for washing dishes is more than enough to prevent transmission. Stainless steel and polypropylene are preferable options for reusable foodware, as they are less likely to leach chemicals than materials that single-use foodware is made from. While there are environmental trade-offs between different single-use and reusable foodware types, reusables tend to have the preferable environmental footprint. In the case studies we've seen, after an upfront investment, schools begin to save money after just a few months. We also believe that reusable foodware helps foster environmental mindfulness and moves our students away from a throwaway culture. We're granting all of you early access to our toolkit now as we roll out additional components and resources. Because this is such an evolving area, we invite you to provide feedback to the plan before we finalize everything. We want to get it in your hands before schools open up, so expect a full launch in mid-July. This is an opportunity for us to rebuild better. Thank you.
Thanks, Elijah. I think Andrea actually pre-recorded her session. She's here to answer questions in person, but I will get her slides ready to show.
Good morning. Thank you to Sue for having me. My name is Andrea Gottlieb, and I run the Rowayton Elementary School Green Team here in Norwalk, Connecticut. We are a K-5 school, and we have approximately 500 students. The Green Team started about 6 years ago, just a group of parents who got together and noticed that there was some garbage and recycling challenges in our school. It has since grown into something much bigger. We now have approximately 60 student Green Team ambassadors, and our mission really changed into educating and informing our students and staff on how to live a more sustainable life at school and at home. We have a staff liaison who we work very closely with. She is totally key to what we get done. She helps communicate the goals and missions of the Green Team to the other faculty in the building. And we also have full support from our principal, Rob Pennington. We work locally with other organizations in town, including Skip the Plastic, our Civic Association, our Six Taxing District, Common Council, and other groups that also do what we do, Wilton Go Green, Norwalk Rose. We have been a member of the Coalition for Zero Waste Schools since the beginning. Through that group, we have recently started a new group called Rethink Disposables Connecticut. And yearly, we participate in the Zero Waste Fair. We started pretty small. We started really with a waste audit throughout the school. We saw that not every classroom had proper recycling in each room, including faculty rooms, specials, art, library, things like that. So we did our audit, and then we approached our Department of Public Works here in Norwalk, who provided us with these recycling cans. We applied for and were awarded a Recycle CT grant, which helped further our mission. We now sell reusable snack and sandwich bags in our school store. We created a sustainable party box that we use for classroom parties instead of single-use type items. You'll see that in a couple slides from now. We play a trash sorting game with our students, especially the younger students and students that are new to the school, kindergartners. So we have a traveling box of items that our ambassadors helped us create. We've got cut out food, and we've glued it onto cardboard. We have items that students would normally find in the cafeteria and in the classroom, and we lay it all out along with signs, and they have to figure out what goes where. That tangible moving of the items for the students has been really successful. We have cut back on single-use water bottle at school events, and we recycle our markers and crayons. Obviously, COVID has changed quite a lot of the things that we were normally doing. So in conjunction with the coalition group, we put out this tips for packing a sustainable lunch. We included some information on how it saves you money and steps that people can easily follow to include reusables in their lunch. We worked pretty hard on this new classroom garbage and recycling signage. We are a multi-language learning school. We realized that at first we had created these list type of signs for sorting, and we've got students that, we're K-5, so our younger grades are still learning how to read. So we moved to this visual-based sorting stream, and it worked really well. You'll see in a couple slides from now, this is where we started our color coding system. After we put in all those recycling cans, we went around classroom to classroom and realized that not only should each classroom have a sign above each can, because students, we put it in assuming everybody knows that that recycling symbol means recycling items, but they didn't, and it was a learning curve. So we laminated and posted these signs above each receptacle. We also realized, and the teachers agreed, that each classroom should really have one of each, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. We had, one of the small challenges we ran into was our day custodial staff. Our head custodian, Rich, is amazing and has been on board with this from the very beginning. But we realized when we were in the school in the evening that it was a whole different staff at night, and they were not properly separating and disposing of recyclables correctly. So we had to work on that communication issue. School events, this was one of the biggest things that our green team wanted to tackle. The endless amounts of single-use water bottles purchased for events in the building and on the fields. We did a big push to ensure that every student, excuse me, had their own reusable water bottle. You can see the image on the top. We do have refill stations throughout our school. It's attached to the water fountain. So we allowed each student, if they wanted, they can refill their bottle at any time. And this way, when they go down to the field for something like field day, they can bring their bottle and they don't have to have a single-use water bottle at the event. We also provided a huge, the big Gatorade sports containers as well, along with paper cups, instead of providing them with water bottles. The picture on the bottom is a quick glimpse of our sustainable party box. So the box contains all of those items, reusable plates and silverware, pitchers to refill at the refill stations. Napkins get left over party to party, so we just include them in the box, and serving utensils. And those boxes, we have 2 of them that are completely outfitted, and parents check them out for classroom parties and are responsible for taking them home and disinfecting and cleaning them. Our breakfast program we had a big problem with. So you can see this was our before picture. Individually wrapped everything, including fruit. So we were really working with our food services group to tackle that program, and a teacher in our school actually approached the city about the problem, and they in turn provided us with these breakfast bags. So the new line looks nothing like this, and students go in the front and they check in and they get their bag, they take their item, they eat in the classroom, and then later in the day a green team ambassador will return those bags to the cafeteria for the next morning. In 2017, our PTA redesigned our cafeteria, and this was really a turning point for us. The redesign made it look beautiful. It's such a great space, and the whale and the panels on the ceiling are actually, sound reduction materials, and we've got our fan and local artwork and round seating. One of the other things that changed with this, you can see on each table, there is a napkin dispenser. Prior to this redesign, everything was, it was like a package wrapped in plastic, and it had a plastic fork, spoon, and knife along with a napkin. So if at any point a student needed another napkin, they would have to take an entire another package. So that was a really big step for us. Even bigger than that was the fact that we were able to identify some unused equipment in our kitchen, and we got a dishwasher. This was huge, huge, huge. So that allowed us to purchase these, the 6 compartment trays and real silverware. Prior to that, we were using styrofoam trays. And, at the very beginning of our program, styrofoam was recyclable. So we had been in the cafeteria helping with that project. But, food contamination on days like Sloppy Joe Day or Spaghetti Day were always a problem, and they ended up in the trash. We had started back then working on alternative products, the paper boats and things like that. We just couldn't figure out the right product for our school. So getting this dishwasher and being able to move to these trays and real silverware was such a huge thing for us. In conjunction with this, we also, in working with the local group Skip the Plastic, we were also able to get rid of, and our food services providers, we were able to switch to paper straws. The other thing of note there is, in a K through 5 school, really kindergarten and first grade are really the only groups that need the paper straws. So we only allow the straws out during those 2 lunch shifts or if we're having smoothie day. Here's a look at our awesome Champion under-counter dishwasher. We purchased it by a local group in Connecticut, Restaurant Supply. It was also installed by then. The trays are FDA approved polypropylene, 6 compartment trays. So with this being in place, we were able to move to a true new waste stream in our cafeteria. We were able to add recycling, liquids, garbage, and compost. One thing to note about this is, it's not a conveyor system. So this also had an impact on our staffing in our kitchen. There is one person whose job it is to go out into the cafeteria, collect the trays, bring them in, line them in that blue container, open the thing. It's a very manual labor type situation. The dishwasher also just washes it. So when you pull that tray out, they are wet and hot, so they have to be moved to another area in the kitchen where we have drying racks. So, our lunch shift it's over a course of 5 hours throughout the day. So this was definitely a change in staffing for us. So that's something to note when you're making. Our new waste stream finally allowed us to bring in composting. I'm very happy that we have this, and I'm amazed. We use a commercial company called Curbside Compost. They take everything, including proteins. I know many traditional organic composting groups don't take citrus and bones and lunch meat, but they do. So that's super helpful. You can see the statistics here about what we weighed in that first week. But I think the thing to note is that, we diverted almost 700 pounds from our regular garbage waste stream, which is just so significant. Another thing of significance here is that we, in a regular lunch shift, each hour of each grade, we would have to take out the garbage at least 1 to 2 times. Now we have 2 garbage cans and they stay for the entire 5-hour shift. So this is a very significant change to the stream in the cafeteria. We did notice that we were losing quite a bit of silverware. So our custodian had an awesome idea about these magnetic lids, which we spray painted green to match because this was composting. So if you drop a fork in, it gets sucked up onto the bottom of the lid, which it ended up saving us so much money. We also have a scraper there, and that's magnetic as well. So the students, if it's a sticky day, they can get it done. Here's a quick glimpse of one of our classes going through our waste stream. We have one in the front and one in the back. That's our custodian, Rich. Very minimal help and assistance from him. Kids can figure it out. You can see our color-coded system there. I don't know. When this first started, we weren't totally sure they'd be able to do it, and they really blew us away. Our waste stream signage is clear, color-coded, easily recognizable to match the new waste stream. The other thing to note here is that we wanted continuity with our look and feel and our color-coded system. So a student leaves our elementary school, moves on to our middle school, moves on to our high school, the color scheme will be the same, and it's just kind of a no-brainer. They will understand school to school that this goes here, that goes there. So that was very important to us. We got some help on our signage from some of our local Girl Scout troop. This is the shadow box that lives in our cafeteria. The thing to note here, I know every city and municipality is different, but we have a what's in, what's out for our city, and we have had to move things several times from recycling to trash. Every city is different, and using these items that children are familiar with in their lunch boxes or in the cafeteria tray items are key to this. And last but not least, how do you start a green team in your school? Just start small. Talk to your PTA and your administration, discuss your ideas, see if you can get a staff liaison, connect with your food services provider and your city or town waste management contact, get the students involved. Our Green Team Ambassador program has almost 60 students in it. We were able to take field trips. They create Google Slides to share with their classes. They are in the cafeteria to help students if they have any questions. There's tons of ways to tie this work into your curriculum. Work with your librarian and your staff liaison to find ways that you can do that. Research grants if you require funding. Join the Coalition for Zero Waste Schools. And don't reinvent the wheel. The reason we're here, the Center for Environmental Health Toolkit, they have case studies, they have examples, they have everything already done for you to figure out how to get this done in your school. There is also the Center for Eco-Technology who will come in locally on the East Coast and do an audit for you and help you secure funding. But more than anything else, start small, and best of luck. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Andrea. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ben, and then when he's done, we'll do the Q&A.
All right. Again, thank you, Andrea, for sharing your inspiring story. My name is Benschleifer. I'm the EDC Food Program Coordinator at CEH, and I'm going to tell you some of the best practices on the journey to reusables. We want more schools to take part, so we are developing the step-by-step planning guide as part of the toolkit that will help schools transition their cafeterias to reusables. We're providing this planning guide as a printable and online resource to everyone on this webinar so schools can utilize it and help the transition in fall 2021. Keep a lookout for the final version in mid-July. And if you need resources before then, feel free to email me at foodware@ceh.org. This is a 12-step planning guide, includes some of CEH's best practice, and we want them to be shared widely. We know that every school is different, so we consider this guide kind of an ongoing conversation. We want to hear back what worked and what didn't, so feel free to share with us your school's story. To begin this journey, you need to set your motivation. The first step is clearly articulating your motivation for wanting to transition your food serviceware. It's wise to think of the process as a journey. Consider the motivation as the lighthouse in this journey, and it will help you navigate in those stormy waters and keep you from losing your way. Consider your initial goal as a destination, but know this destination might change. Andrea tried to get those single-use bottles out of the school, and she ended up bringing composting into the school. Both are great for the environment, but probably wasn't the original goal that she set. There's an African proverb that says, when you're going on a journey, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I really can't emphasize this enough. This is a very hard process to do by yourself. So don't do it by yourself. There are so many people and groups that want to help. Activate them. Your partners will help you on your journey. At the school level, start your own PTA committee around this issue. Other like-minded advocates will make your voice stronger when you're asking for the change. We have resources on how to form PTA meetings and turn it green in this planning guide. Some partners will also bring different strengths to the table. Students in particular can pressure the community. Principals need to have the sign off on this project, and custodian and nutritional service staff can provide huge helps, but you need to address their concerns at the onset. When you're starting a journey, you need to know what to bring. There is information you need to gather about your destination to make sure that you have the smoothest journey possible. First, you have to decide if you're going to try to implement at the school or district level. If you start at the school level, you can often use that as a pilot to convince the district to make changes for all the schools. For example, Berkeley Unified School District has expressed they want to go completely to reusables, but will be piloting with a few schools very shortly to begin the troubleshooting process. You'll also need to collect information from the district to see how to begin your approach, regardless of how you want to implement. You do not necessarily need to have all the information, but you need to know where to get it and who holds it. In this planning guide, we're going to include some comprehensive assessment and who to ask to get the information. We'll also include ways to gather your own information. You should consider doing a waste audit. The picture here is me doing a waste audit and getting my hands dirty. This allows you to know exactly how many single-use disposables your school is throwing away every day. You can also learn other metrics, such as how much food is getting disposed of each day, the students are good at sorting waste, and how many pounds of landfill waste you're sending from the cafeteria over a year. We're including individual audits on dishwashing, carbon footprint, and cost as well. Also, if you're going to collect the data for any school or district, CEH wants that data. It's very powerful, and we can share it with everyone so they can compare it across state lines. Even if you're going to make the journey immediately, taking partial steps towards reusable is a move in the right direction. Every school is different. We know not all schools are going to have the infrastructure to go immediately to reusables. Even if this journey is too far, making a plan to start with is a solid first step. This guide will include a flow chart to help frame your thinking around the issues. We'll also include approaches for different types of programming, including a full reusable rollout, a partial reusable rollout, and transition to PFAS-free single-use compostable food serviceware. It's reasonable to make a plan for every item or food or packaging that comes through your cafeteria. When you're traveling on a journey, it's important to plan and schedule out some of the important days. Some change, like transitioning a cafeteria, on the shorter end could take 2 months, and on the longer end, and particularly to take a year or more. It's hard to know how long it will take, but the assessment will give you a sense of this. Just know that everything usually takes a little longer than you think, and consider this journey a marathon and not a sprint. On a journey, you're going to also meet a lot of people. It's okay to let them adjust your destination or goals, but always stay true to that lighthouse. At both the school and district level, you're going to need to set up a stakeholder meeting. Bring the proposal, assessment data, cost analysis, schedule, and sample case studies. You might not need any of them, but they're handy to have in your back pocket. But the most important part of the stakeholder meeting is to listen to the stakeholders' concern. In the planning guide, we're going to include a portion of how to address some of these most common concerns. You want to finalize the project with the stakeholders, make them feel included in the process, make sure the principal is okay moving forward, share emails and phone numbers and open lines of communication. Set up another meeting if you can't get the project finalized, and let folks know this is going to be an ongoing process until a consensus is reached. All right. On the journey, you might have to spend a little money. It's hard to say that reusables always are more cost effective than single-use food serviceware items because all schools are different. But let's take an example. Let's say we have a K-5 elementary school with about 500 students, all who have one meal served on polystyrene trays with a sport kit every day. You could save around $6,000 a year if you transition to stainless steel trays and forks. How do I know this? Well, we made a calculator to help to figure out the cost. And we have over 100 different items, single use and reusable, you can use to compare how much you could be potentially saving just in regards to food serviceware. So some cost and savings that you should be aware of is that there will be some upfront costs, including maybe buying a dish machine, maybe renovating the kitchen for the dish machine, maybe definitely buying some of the reusables, but also the reusable infrastructure, the dish carts, the dish racks, the waste bins. There's also ongoing annual costs, the machine's maintenance, the detergent. If you're washing dishes off-site, you're going to have to transport those from the school to off-site and back again. Labor is a big deal, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And there's also utility costs that you should be aware of. But again, the savings is not buying those food servicewares every single year. You don't have to worry about storage them. And if you have certain types of waste, you're going to reduce your waste. And if you pay as you pay per pound, you will reduce your waste costs. So let's talk about some of these dish washing and dish machines. Some of the savings you could make from food serviceware could be put to the dish machine. You can consider it on-site versus off-site. Some schools just have a dishwasher on-site and they'll wash them as they produce, but some are off-site too. You have to be aware of the bell schedule, the lunch schedule, and know how many sets of food serviceware you're going to need to do a one day worth of lunch. And you also have to figure out the transportation between off and on-site. There are 3 different types of dish machines. There's the under counter, which is the smallest, the door type, which is probably the most appropriate for most size schools, and the conveyor type, which is, again, very large. They are all in racks per minute, so number of racks you can wash per, racks per hour, number of racks you can wash per hour, but you can translate that into how many meals you serve in the cafeteria per day. We also realize that a dish machine might be a big leap for a lot of folks. So there are other ways you can go about reducing your food serviceware. You can have 1 day a week dedicated no food serviceware. You can have dispensers like Andrea mentioned. You can even have a 3-sink system in the kitchen that washes the food serviceware that maybe is just like a basket and a fork. And I just want to say that dishwashing was the norm in school cafeterias to the 80s, and they switched it because they wanted to save water and cost. And now the dish machines are way, way more water and energy efficient than they were back then. So labor, yeah, some folks' job to help you along your journey, and they deserve to get paid for their work. It might be appropriate to shift the amount of labor around schools' food waste, especially in incorporating a dish machine. We call the folks who work with the dish machine the dishwashers, to get that nomenclature right. Again, every school is different. At the school level, you can expect an on-site elementary might need anywhere from 2 to 8 hours of work to clean the dishes. This can be done by one person or many folks. Part of the assessment will be finding out how many meals are served on average and how long it will take to clean up that food serviceware. If you're increasing labor hours for work for reusables, hiring someone new might be harder than providing extra hours to existing employees, particularly nutrition service workers. These folk will usually welcome more paid hours. The nutrition service director will need to be looped in, and the principal as well. Also, you should note that unions might come into play as well. The cost of the labor can be potentially offset by the savings of not buying those single-use items every year. Some journeys do not need to start with a big production, but we find that this one does. When launching a transition in the cafeteria, tell everyone who will listen. Use an assembly or the morning announcements, but make sure the message comes from someone with authority, such as the principal, to ensure the students and staff are all on the same page. An assembly is a best practice, and planning guide will have a script and slide templates. We recommend including a school mascot or waste mascot if you have access to one. Try to get the stakeholders involved and appreciate them by name to the whole school community. Many folks, like the custodians and nutrition service folk, do not get appreciated enough for their very hard work. Lastly, you can show off signage and posters and any other resources in the assembly. And if you already have an active green team, make sure to thank them and actively recruit some more potential volunteers. When you're going on a journey, some folks will often surprise you. On this journey, you're going to be surprised by how many people want to help around the waste and getting the food serviceware out of the schools. At the school level, a green team is a group of dedicated volunteers who will help green initiatives at lunch. Forming a school green team is highly recommended. You can utilize parents, teachers, and staff, but consider using the students as well. Many students are excited at this prospect of the leadership roles in the school. These are some students who spontaneously started sorting the trash with a food corps member. In the planning guide, we will include a sign-up template and a schedule template for the green teams. Some green teams are present every day at lunch, but you can also spread it out twice a week, or just have the folks monitor it immediately after the launch. You can also include a whole grade to participate and make sure that being on the green team is a privilege and not a punishment. Again, signage is super important. Signage at the waste bin is crucial because the signs are really doing some of the heavy lifting. You can make examples of actual waste like Andrea did, but it's really important to make sure that the signage is at the level for your audience. So if you're working with 5-year-olds, you're wanting the signage at their eye level so that they can see what goes where. And know that the signage sometimes needs to change. And we're providing the planning guide is also going to have some signage templates you can utilize as well. When you're on a journey, it's always a good idea to check in and evaluate how it's going. At the school level, try to include the students in evaluating how the new system is working. They're on the front lines and they know what is working and what is not. In the planning guide, we're going to include some NGSS, Next Generation Science Standard aligned lessons to do waste audits at many different grade levels for the students. You should consider looking at the easy to achieve metrics, such as number of landfill bags, number of single-use disposables per day, weight of organics composted. Remember, if you're sharing information about social media, that's data as well. At times in a journey, you should take a moment to reflect and celebrate. School is a busy place, but taking a moment to reflect and appreciate some of the progress you made around the health and sustainability is actually very important. At the school level, having a second assembly is warranted. You can share some of the successes and even the failures of the journey. You can challenge the students and staff to go further and even provide incentives for the work that the people have put in. Lastly, it's nice to appreciate those folk who work so hard around this a second time. This 12-step planning guide is meant to start the conversation about reusables at school. You don't have to think of it as linear, but a circular, ongoing journey that continues until you have reusables in your cafeteria and even after. This also means you don't necessarily have to start at a particular place. For example, if your school forms a green team and they notice the waste in the school, you can begin there like Andrea's school did. Also means that you might not have a finite ending. Remember, think of the planning guide as a journey and not a destination. We'll be finalizing this plan in mid-July. If you would like to request some resources, you can email me at foodware@ceh.org. And I'm going to turn it back over to Sue, and we're going to take some questions about the toolkit. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, I think we're going to open it up to Q&A. And before we do that, I just wanted to mention and put in a plug for a new tool that will be coming out later this year. So I'm going to just share my screen real briefly. And I also sent you all a link to where you can find our toolkit. But I wanted to mention, because of the concern with toxic chemicals in the different food serviceware products, CEH and another national nonprofit organization called Clean Production Action decided to create a certification that will look at the ingredients of single-use food serviceware products. Because currently we don't have access to all of that information. Manufacturers don't disclose that. So as companies are moving out of PFAS for the molded fiber products in particular, we don't know what they're using instead. So the green screen is a tool that will allow purchasers to identify products with safer chemistry. And we hope to have that out at some point before the end of 2021. We are thinking sometime in the fall. And if you sign up, you can get notified of when it's going to be released as soon as we know. I do see that questions have come in, and some of our panelists were already on top of it and answered a bunch of them on the chat. So I think that all of you can see those responses. I guess I want to see if there's others, or that if there's any follow-up questions, if your questions were answered in the first round. Oh, okay, Andrea, did you have one or two that you were planning?
I did. There was Kelsey Hammond had talked about instituting local reusable system, adding dishwashers, and basically it looks like she got shut down because of the increase in staff with unions and contracts. That is definitely something that we also ran into. And the tip there is to find in your board of ed who is in charge, your finance director and your food services director. Every municipality and school district is different, and the budget lines are controlled differently across the country, as we know, but starting the conversation with those two groups in order to hire an extra individual. Our school is only 500 students, but between that person going out into the line and bringing in the stuff and running the machine and putting it in the drying room and then reloading the line, it's a whole person for a 5-hour shift. So I wanted to address that from Kelsey. And then Amy Bloomfield wanted to talk about other ways instead of going for the full, moving all the way to reusables right off the bat. Again, I think that is the start small and, run a waste audit in your school. We were very fortunate to have this dishwasher, and we were going down a totally different path prior to getting that, but just, taking the cafeteria out of it maybe and starting in smaller ways around the school would be my response to that. Thanks.
Okay, great. And I do see a question about bulk milk dispensers. I believe we are planning to add to the toolkit. There is a case study of a school that had bulk milk dispensers. We just didn't have it ready to post up today. So we can put that or send you some follow-up information, and then also get that up as soon as we can. Let's see. Oh, and I did want to comment though on the labor piece. I think Palo Alto was able to just add, I think, 2 part-time staff. One was a dishwasher, and then a part-time van driver. They have a centralized model. I know they're maybe on a smaller side, but you know, I think it will vary from school to school. So I'm not sure I understand this one. There's a question from Jackie Wilson. Has there been success in schools that offer versus serve?
Yeah, I think they're referring to like offering a sport versus giving everyone a sport kind of thing. And there have been some successes. Oakland Unified School District has successfully, with the hard work of Nancy Deming, has successfully instituted policy around dispensers. And that's actually an easier lift than like getting a dish machine in there. And it will, because you can just say it will be cheaper, because if you don't have to give every student a single one, you can just take as they need it. So there are successes around that. And if you're concerned about starting, that is a lovely first place to start.
Great. And we got a comment from a company, Eco2Go, in San Diego, saying that their experience has found that central washing is much more economical than each school hiring an individual and dishwashing on their own sites, especially for about 500 student sized schools. So, you know, there's questions also about sort of why schools moved away from reusables in the 80s. And I don't know if we actually found a good answer for that.
It wasn't readily apparent, but there was a big push in the 70s for plastic disposables, and that's not just in schools, that's just around the country. And I think that kind of filtered into the school system. I heard multiple tales that the dish machines were using too much water, and it was becoming not cost effective. So a lot of schools moved to disposables. But again, those dish machines are way better at using both power and water. And, you know, our kind of policy is that we think it's way better to pay someone in the community for, you know, their hard work that's serving the community than paying for something that you use for 20 minutes and then just end up throwing in the landfill and causes all this environmental degradation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then there's another question about experience with classroom-based meals like Montessori. Does anyone feel like they can answer that one?
I could try. I mean, I know there are some schools in Connecticut that do family style meals. And the one school that I know about, they still use reusables, and the food comes out in bowls and it's served at a table family style. But I don't really think that would change the usage of reusables, as far as I know. I don't know if that helps.
I think also if you're doing like, there's some folks who get served breakfast in their classroom and then lunch in a cafeteria system. And those are two different systems with two different approaches. In the classroom, again, you have more control over the classroom environment, but it would be a more complicated push. But we'll consider that and see if we can add something about that in the planning guide. It wasn't on our radar, but now it is.
Great.
Anne's question, our school is on the free and reduced lunch program. And, you know, the dispensers that has actually been discussed, but that is still actually being discussed. You know, we would still have the containers, but during the real live lunch cycle offer the milk dispenser, but I see your point for sure.
So we also have a question about, do you know of any cities or states that require space allotment and inclusion of dishwashers in new school buildings? Space is often an issue in older schools, so it would be beneficial to plan for this with new school buildings. Did you have any experience, Andrea?
No, I mean, I do know actually, sorry, most of the schools in our city are somewhat old, and a lot of them they had the hookups available, like similar to what we discussed. Like it was kind of the only thing that happened in schools. So those machines were removed, so there's still space for it. But I think the more things like this get discussed, it should be part of, you know, it's not really school per school, that moves to more of a Board of Ed city planning type situation. And that, again, is another reason to involve your finance director along with your food services provider, for sure.
And there are also folks who are doing dish machine sales that will do a dish audit for schools and kind of help you along the process, because it's definitely not intuitive like which dish machine you necessarily need, where it goes, and how to most cost effectively install it into certain buildings. So we're going to be including some dish audit material as well in the planning guide.
And just going back to the previous question about the classrooms, another participant reminded us that, Palo Alto is actually using these plastic clam shells. So those could be more easily used in a classroom setting and kind of transported around. So thanks for that. And I know we're getting up to the top of the hour, so maybe we can only take one or two more questions if they're quick. There's one question about how do you get away from prepackaged food, such as bags of mini carrots?
That again is another food services director. Our director was very open. For example, we have a salad bar, and we were trying to get rid of those prepackaged carrots, and then they switched to putting them in little plastic cups, which at least at that point, the cups could be recycled where the bags were considered trash. But prior to COVID, we were working on making other changes in that salad line, like having loose carrots. They're the sneeze guard hole. It's a real problem. But one of the small things too that we were about to launch was removal of prepackaged dressing and ketchup packets, and going back to the old school pump that they can put right in the tray on their, right into the square on their tray.
And I do know that Palo Alto also was able to move to little, I think, stainless steel mini cups where they put, I think, the mini carrots and things like that. So I don't know if we're going to have time for any more questions. We're almost at 10 Pacific time, but we will try to look at the rest of the questions and maybe answer it offline. And would love to get feedback from you all and have you let us know if you're making progress or how things are going, because we do see this as an interactive, evolving space where a lot of things are changing, and so we would love to stay in touch. Thank you again to all our speakers, and we really are so impressed by all the work that's happened in Andrea's school. And I heard that she is having conversations at the district level about, once things are going back, actually expanding that work on reusables across the district. So hopefully that will go well. And thank you for joining, and we will see you offline.